Well, hello again, and welcome back to another day of our Whole50 Bible study as we are walking through 50 passages in the Bible that are designed to take you on a journey and me on a journey of spiritual transformation. We are now, as you can see today, where is it? Right here. We are now, as you can see today, on day 20. There are 50 days. Is that right? Yeah, I guess so. Whole 50. So we are 20 days into the 50. So you've almost reached the halfway mark. And if you've been doing every day with us, congratulations. You've made it through quite a journey of passages. And I'd love to get some feedback on what you've been thinking about it. And so let me know in the comments. And we are really just beginning. It continues to get deeper, more interesting, and hopefully more transforming as well each and every step of the way. Today, we are in Proverbs chapter 3, verses 1 through 10. And the heading on mine says, Trust or Trusting in the Lord. And I read that and I thought, trusting in the Lord, yeah, that's something that I can get behind. And then as I thought about it a little bit, I realized trusting in the Lord is one of those things that are easy to say, but not always easy to do. I say I trust in the Lord. I say I want to trust in the Lord. It's kind of like Paul. We looked at that passage in Romans 7 a few days ago. I know what to do, but I don't do it. I want to do the right thing, but I end up doing the wrong thing. I have this thing that's chained to me, and we want to trust in the Lord. We want to have faith. We want to live well, but then we come to some of those difficult moments in life, and where the rubber meets the road, it can be difficult to trust in God. Much easier said than done. And so that is where we are today on day 20 of the Whole50 Bible study. And it is brought to you thanks to the generosity of all of our donors, all of you at ChristTable.today. A reminder, here in just a few days, I'm going to be mailing out the next Bible study. It's going to kick off on May 17th. I guess you might say 30 days from today. So looking forward to having you along for that. Everybody who donates to Christ's Table in the month of April, I will send one of these to you free of charge. And there's going to be something extra that's included in there with it. But I'm not going to tell you. It's going to be a surprise. So you're just going to have to wait. So before we jump into the book of Proverbs, one more thing I want to tell you. Proverbs is a part of the wisdom literature of the Old Testament. And what we want to do is we always want to make sure that we read the books of the Bible in the genre that they're intended to be read in. Whenever we read a Harry Potter novel, we read a Harry Potter novel different than we would read a textbook on World War II. One of them we understand to be fiction and a story. The other one we understand to be nonfiction and based upon history. Whenever we come to a book of poetry, we would read a book of poetry different than we would read a Harry Potter novel or a textbook on World War II. So when we come to the Bible, we understand that it is a collection of 66 books, and these books are literary books that have different genres. And when we come to the book of Proverbs, it's in the midst of 5 books in the Old Testament that we call wisdom literature, which is its own genre. So Proverbs is a great book, and many of us have read through the entirety of Proverbs or have heard pieces of the book of Proverbs. And one of the things that we have to understand about the book of Proverbs is that it's good advice, but it's not thus saith the Lord doctrine, if that makes sense. The book of Proverbs is written by a father to his son, Solomon. Some of the things that are in here are his thinking and wise sayings, and some of them are things that he has collected from other places. But whenever we come to these things, we understand that the things that Proverbs promises are things that most of the time, for most people, in most circumstances, hold true. But not all of the time. Like one of the classic ones is raise up a child in the way that they should go, in the way that they should live, and when they're old, they won't depart from that. Many times, for most people, in most situations, that holds true. Where you raise a child in the right way, in the way that they should go, and even though they may stray from that path, whenever they get older, they'll come back to that path. But that doesn't necessarily hold true for all children, all of the time, in every situation. So does that mean that the Bible is wrong and that that verse is wrong? Well, no, because it wasn't written in order to be a thus saith the Lord. This is something that God is promising us all the time for all people in all situations. Is saying this is really good advice in the way that you should handle yourself, the way that you should live. This is wisdom, the better side of wisdom. But we're individuals with our own freedoms, and sometimes things just don't work out the way that we had hoped that they would, even when we did our best. So when we come to Proverbs, that's what we're coming to. Really good advice that's going to hold true for most people in most situations, most of the time. And with that intro, why don't we just go ahead and jump into the text here in Proverbs chapter 3, verse 1. My child, never forget the things that I've taught you. Store my commands in your heart. So again, a father writing to his son, encouraging him to live a life that is guided by wisdom. In the book of Proverbs, wisdom is represented by a wise woman. Makes a lot of sense, right? He says, don't forget the things I've taught you. Store my commands in your heart. If you do this, you will live many years and your life will be satisfying. So there's one of those things. Just because you may not forget the things that mom or dad taught you, just because you may store the commands in your heart and live them out, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to live to 95 years old like Queen Elizabeth. It doesn't mean that every moment in your life is going to be satisfying. But if you live with wisdom, you're going to take away a lot of the dangers in life that come from not living in a wise way, and your life's going to be more satisfying living a life directed by good wisdom rather than a life directed by, as Proverbs says, folly. Verse 3, never let loyalty and kindness leave you. Tie them around your neck as a reminder and write them deep within your heart. There's a practice that still is ongoing, a Jewish custom where they will wear boxes of wise sayings around their head, around their neck, around their temple, that they will write these things on the hem of their garments. And so the Jewish people take some of these commands that are like this very literally then and even today. I think it's actually a really great thing in practice to take some of these things literally. Tie them around your neck as a reminder. I've never done this, but just had this idea. Why not read this verse, read this text with your kids, with your grandkids, maybe with nieces and nephews, and then get a shirt, buy a shirt, and maybe on the inside, under the collar, write some wisdom or some wise sayings from the Bible or from you for them. So that every time they see that shirt or wear that shirt, they're going to remember and know that wherever they are, they're wearing a physical reminder of the truth, of your love for them, of God's love for them. And so whether or not Solomon meant this literally or figuratively, the Jews take things like this very, very literally, and I think it's been very important to them over the years, over the generations, to maintaining their course. Then you will find favor with both God and people, and you will earn a good reputation. Great words. And then some of the most well-known words here in verses 5 and 6, not just in Proverbs, but perhaps even in the Bible. Now, I memorized this verse as a little kid in the King James Version, and so I have a hard time reading verses like this sometimes that have been memorized in the King James. I have a hard time reading it in other translations because it just doesn't make sense. So I'm going to try. In fact, maybe what I'll do is I'll just read it in what this is, the New Living Translation, and then also I'll just talk about it in the King James. Trust in the Lord with all of your heart. Do not depend on your own understanding. Seek His will in all you do, and He will show you which path to take. Okay, King James, trust the Lord with all of your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. In all of your ways, acknowledge Him, and He will direct your path. So, trust the Lord with all of your heart. When we think of heart, we think of emotions, the power of our will. When they hear this, the emotions, the seat of the will, all those things wouldn't have been the heart. It would have been the gut. And so when they speak of heart, they are speaking of more the mind in a lot of ways, like the decision-making side. So in all of your decisions, in all of the things that you must choose between A, B, or C in your journey, trust in the Lord. Well, what's the alternative to trusting in the Lord? Well, it's trusting in yourself, or as the verse says, depending on your own understanding, or as the King James says, leaning on your own understanding. What happens if you lean on something that isn't secure? Well, I actually did that 2 days ago. I bought a new camping chair for baseball whenever we go and watch the kids play baseball. And this chair is like a hammock chair, and I look like the old man that I am sitting in this hammock chair. It's essentially a lazy boy camp chair. But there are these pins that you have to put into the legs, and it just says, they're like orange, they're bright orange, and there's a tag on both of them that says these pins must be inserted. Well, I forgot to insert the pins when I was putting it together. And so I sit down in it, and as soon as I sit down in this thing, I just completely fall backwards, and it collapses, folds in on itself and on me. And so, the first thing I do is not check and see whether or not I'm okay. I look around to make sure nobody's around. Fortunately, I got there early, so nobody was there, and I don't think anybody saw it. But whenever you lean or place your weight on something that isn't secure, and you collapse. And this is kind of the picture here is if you place the weight of your decisions and the path that you take on your understanding, your knowledge, then it's going to collapse, and you're going to collapse with it. And so you have to place your trust and your faith in God and what He says. And unfortunately, we don't have to wonder what that is or what that looks like. We have everything that we need to know right here. So trust in the Lord with all of your heart, all of your decisions, all of your choices, everything that you go throughout your day, not just when you're in church, not just the spiritual things, but all things. Don't lean on your own understanding. Seek His will in all you do, or in all your ways, acknowledge Him. To acknowledge something is to recognize its presence, and its importance and its power everywhere. And so here, the translators in the New Living Translation call that seeking His will. And that's a fair translation. But I think that quite literally what's being said here is in all your ways, seek to know Him. That's why the King James says, acknowledge Him. It's about knowing Him. In all your ways, the New Living says, seek His will. King James says, seek to acknowledge Him. They both mean essentially seek to know Him. Whenever you know someone, you begin to learn how they think, how they act, and more importantly, how they're going to respond in a situation. So the older that my kids get, the more I learn about them and how they're wired and who they are. And the more I can guess rightly how they're going to respond or act in any given situation. My wife, Sally, I can guess in many situations is almost exactly how she's going to respond or react, what she's going to think, what she's going to say, or what she's going to do. Terrifyingly, she can do that for me as well, but probably twice as good as I can do it for her. And so that's simply because I have over the years become a student of her, and she's become a student of me. Part of that is just being in proximity to each other for so long. You understand the other person more and more the more you're in proximity to them. Part of that as well is because there is a deep relationship of love there between us. And so I want to know her better. I want to understand how she's going to respond, what she likes, what she dislikes, what will make her approve of me, what will cause her to disapprove of me. This is the exact same situation with God. Whenever it says here, in all of your ways, seek to know him. By simply spending more time in proximity to God, you're going to begin to know him better. By desiring to understand what he approves of and what he disapproves of, you're going to begin to know him better. You want to know God's will? The New Living Translation there says seek his will. You want to know God's will? I can remember so often when I was a younger guy, just reading book after book after book about God's will and stressing over God's will and what does God want? What does he want me to do in my life? Who does he want me to spend my life with? What path does he want me to take? Where should I go to school? What should I do for a career? Yada, yada, yada. You want to know God's will? Know God well. Say that again. You want to know God's will? Know God well. And you'll be living his will. That's what this line means. In all your ways, seek to know him. Seek his will. The only way you can do that is to know him well. So it's just saying, learn God. Get to know him. Spend time in proximity with him. Learn what he likes and what he dislikes. What he approves of and what he disapproves of. And then the final line, and he will show you which path to take. King James says he will direct your path. Quite literally, what's being said here in the Hebrew is imagine a big blanket. It's linen wrinkles. Imagine this linen sheet that's absolutely wrinkled. It's got ups and downs and looks like this mountain thing. You could take a Hot Wheel and drive around it. And then imagine what happens whenever you wet that thing down a little bit, you iron it out, how crisp it is, how flat, how perfect it is. That's exactly the image of your life that's being shown here in this final line, that he will show you which path to take. What's literally being said is he will iron out the ups and the downs and the lefts and the rights. He will make your path straight. He'll take out the bumps in the road. He'll straighten out the forks in the road so you don't have to follow switchbacks and rabbit trails. If you trust in the Lord with all of your heart, don't lean on what you think you know, but lean on him and his knowledge, wisdom, which again, we've said you can find right here. In everything that you do, seek to know him better. Then he will iron out your path. Don't be impressed with your own wisdom. Instead, fear the Lord. Turn away from evil. Then you will have healing for your body, strength for your bones. If you have money, and you do, honor the Lord with your wealth and with the best part of everything that you produce. Wow, I could speak a lot to that, how we've lost the ability to trust God with our finances and to be free in giving with them. Then he will fill your barns with grain, and your vats will overflow with good wine. You have not because you give not. You have less because you're not generous enough. It's counterintuitive, but in God's kingdom, it is a upside down kingdom. The first shall be last, the last shall be first. Those who give more shall be given more too. And so Solomon shows us that all of life is a singular journey, that belief and behavior belong together, that you can't simply just believe in God but not behave, live as though you believe in God. It says you can't live like a Christian but not actually believe those things. Both of those things have to be united together. What you think and how you live. And that is what the book of Proverbs is about. The book of Proverbs is about aligning those two things that so often are out of alignment in God followers. Why? Because it's hard to do both. It's difficult to do both. It requires something of us. And so we end up only doing one. We believe it, but we never live it. Or we live it, and we don't really believe it. Both of those, the word for that is hypocrite. It's a hypocrite. You believe that God is generous. You believe that Jesus died for you, but you're only a Sunday morning Christian. You don't actually live it out. It doesn't affect anything in your life, in your relationships, in your work, in your play, in your finances. That's being a hypocrite. It's also being a hypocrite to pretend, to put on the Christian face whenever you're with your Christian friends, but you're only doing it to network. You're only doing it in order to make other people like you or to fit in, but you don't really believe it. That's being a hypocrite as well. And Solomon says in the book of Proverbs that both of those, son, are the wrong ways to live. And so there you have it, the book of Proverbs. And I hope that you've enjoyed this as much today as I have as well. Don't forget, go to christtable.today. I want to make sure that we have your name on the list whenever we send these out here in probably about 10 days or 2 weeks or so. So you've got a little bit more time, but appreciate you being a part of the journey, not just with Christ Table, but also in these Bible studies. And until tomorrow, day 21, happy reading.